O God, may your spirit and guidance be in us as we work for the benefit of all our people, for peace and justice in our land, and for the constant recognition of the dignity and aspirations of those whom we serve. Amen.
Minister statements. Minister statements. Minister responsible for the
Minister responsible for status of government Masi. 2/24 MSC. Do nega si nega aneseti. Si got alko tendede. Ta si teko inlenide Masi.
Are there any nays? There are no nays. You may continue.
Mr. Speaker, Chokola asi negani o di kwego yesi tu teko tinde go ande. Jite keji ne chen asi nini di tene kada azge maga tene endaki ko te di enda jite ke ajonsi asi negani la. Di zhe li xi tang ni de de go hu le lo qiao zhe se zhe ke ka yang de xin yi go ga de da yi da xie xi ne ga ni o di mi zhe hong da ne ga ne chu da di zhe ke xi national day remember zhe ke xi zhe li qiao zhe se yi man de December 6 ke e kuwa go za si ja 14 zhe li sa zhe ni de Montreal town o ga en de yi zhe ke xi la kan de xi la ko la di tu te Canada ye de le go no Northwest Territories ye a zhong zhe de na ki na se sa me ke na de si ja zhe go di a zhong zhe ke xi chia ko zhe de si zhe ke ga ni de a zhong de ne xi tu le be ko ne zu go kyo di kan de zhe ko se zhe di xia xi zhe ke xi o ko zhe ko se a di number xi zhe guan de 1-844-413-6649 di kan di xi go zhe guan de ya du le 24 hours la di zhe da ka ni la. Mr. Speaker, du zhe ne xi the Governor's Territories has a draft action plan in this area, the Justice Secretary, no the National Inquiry, the DC la li has an istego who lazy take. The Laton Yagala Magalaita, the current programs serves that a Jean Candina Zaken, the Honeta, the Candisi Candicatita, the Sigulia Zelia. Kagon de Gazago, Gulia Conteze Kezi Kokio Dizeki Anide. Ida is the Kezi Meta Gulia Contezi out. Concern Azekarushi, the Kenide, not the Assis any ITZ, Kala, Ajon, Justice Taketizi Gukasitia. Tizi Meganda, Meze Honda government, Kotera Midi Kezi Koagala Itaji, Hona Hegini Saint Gigasi Yan. Hajongo tinde yezi tenezi wona geni seni de dikandizi guaga lai tani de nezua. Ya koni nezu guaga dikandi nyuzi a ni den. GNWT zeke changing relationships as in law ya GNWT di justice kage de keragila. Edi dia kozagen dia di tanakara azeke a rong go zeni de me chungaran da de zen guizia dule na me ta a di ze ke xin ze li tene li ze li si kan di ja ro go hu li di di hu li chia go ze se zene ta de go jin si ga ka la du jo ji go ki gi di la me ze hon da de a rong de te ji go tin de te ge de di di me ze action plan down de gu liao ze le ze ke ji government ze ke ni de DC 这里是看地区国家大力点 rong ko ta ke Northwest Territory kulia gu chani de me hane zu te dion. Mr. Speaker, ke ni de ka ta mega kulia gon de ko ta ko ga lai ta indigenous leadership je ko san shu. Ka na ke ta de si ti tu le ko ga lai ta ti ta de si ni ta le. Ji ta tu se ne si kulia gu li di kulia je le se ko ne za gu te ye ta he ne lan ta di an de ne za le di se kan di si je je ke ko na ze ta ze ti ni de na hi da go ga ti yan se ko ze si ga zhen da je si le kan di si me ga ta tu te ko tin de ji je ke ni de Solandi condition it's a policy procedures is the kakoto me as la cardio menda megare saga laita the the program just allow the service easy talo si tu le ne zwa ze le ne se si tla tu le a zo ze kandia me ze hwa ne zu ka tu le tu te go tin de ne zuna ze den Mr. Speaker, the Tagai was a candy metasiga zanta ago. Candy ni de tule metasiti, as you take on the share. The candy said the legani dea yun dagos and asego to munizia. The candy magazine lane flucani de catule metiasiu de the Tagai si candy action plan at the lane. The government koni si di juka kala sa ko kako dia. Ko zani ya zi li ju me da la a di ga kala ta ni de. Dia rong de ne si ko kala ta di de na kala a ze ke government organization ze ke si. Ki di kan di si la gu lia ko zan de ze ni ze ga le ko kan ji o de le. Mr. Speaker, di ze ke si ya the candidate to a tiny de machine here. Tizeke candidaten that the Kenny de Catule, a sigulia with a letter Kizigatan, a zone the Kizi candidate Liatule. Jiteke Mete action plan a scene, Gugliante, Candigo Sandile, a gili take got the tandi to teach the Haragoti, Cotsumizua machines. He kaguchada ni de tenete lize kezi kandi si tule zugo koketen tine zugo cha kotsego kotada aventa si metaza tia tule ti kandi gulia guchaza kezi metsua magainda ne zuonde ti asi ze kezi yunda go gani tenazre tan ti si de ze lin si kandi ze lia kandi kada asi ze kuchai ti ze kia yunda go Merci, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur Minister statement, Premier. Mr. Speaker, Julie Green Chonki Natatiale. A all conference call federal to eventual territorial minister health Kotser du Caroline was a issue to Kichwa the Ale Dutton, it to Kati Kanju Gotekondia, Tizekia. Masi, Mr. Speaker. Member statement, a new Victorian Lake. Mr. Speaker, Nahe on Dashi, the Beaufort Delta region is he, Adishi Magaita, the Dane Zago Gashi, he 48 seniors not get there, 216. Mr. Speaker, is he attended a good Mercury Janet, the Cagotini de Dandiazalia, Dati on Dageti. Esi di tisi te koi chaja gu telegini. Dati te keni de the 48-bed facility la radio kagin lale. Ijeke handu wanani said. The capital planning was a change of Keladacha. The county got out that says the Kazi continue the eye and Lenny. Is it the Kazi the one the cat years in la government la down there with Zagandia? The county the K on the county go Tiani there. The regions oil the core road region GC Contago that sells the Kazi got and Dalenaja on Dagio D. Ya the Ozam with the Azgoni. That is the Kazi county and see. Wasn't as go the home care work without the Mr. Speaker. The metal the out the Kazi on that the key could go family make you teach the key. So can the quaya the home quit to go at the key. That is the Kazi the order she good lizard to go kill the that the government law could lot it on it. Tui Kazaliago on the Sigutin Lalosi, Kotagora Tezeke Ganide, Kandigo Zao Tizeke Ganidella, go government target, the the other diagin line is your Kotan administrator to Kennedy Zekeo, Masin. That's true. Mr. Speaker, Tutsenesi Lati Kliezeke, 19 Legislative Assembly. Yet the other day Azule to Canada go, Tizutashi the Gaugane Nizeke Yogo Diati. Kotagora Trilezeke, Shinla, Tauti, and DC, Gogot Aleti, post secondary education zeki. The members Zeki, and Azeguin, November 29. A cool ministry, she got the county gani de ka education gani de county go on get education see the case ministry it Tiago Taze go on the county the and then that Mr. Speaker the case gala see dule na kendi the case I ended. That is the case. Kiko was a cut at Tilende, Situle Magazanta. That is a Kegani de, he is a Kegani della. Situle Magazanta is a Kewagot and a Tezekiayan. That continue de Tule cut at the end. That the K degree 12 the Keheon. He at all the Naya Tizekishu, then the Takake the Rakich, Ijiteke down dear. Then it's a not the education minister that you can't take his down him and daddy was in Daji the Kiwandi. Masi Monkfi Masi, Mr. Speaker. The mass market take around. Ita, Mr. Speaker, Tina, no, there's any day are wrong. Na Koda Kotasia, Nasiti, Nahot is that is a case right tiny day, 9 years ago. Amidita Kikoya Gotele, Kotamidi, Moti, she can't see, Ki Sako. Candici, Nakadesha Huli. Nakia Rome Gurijo, Tea Tig, a Queenie della, Joseph Mary got Jesus, got a coup, Hadi Desi, Kenandi, Notia Magulia, Candici, Kota, Kogaganata, Tauti Gotati. And not Teja Ka, you get it on a Jisi that the Barna, no Siamaguli. Mr. Speaker, the condition that the Tennessee Quacots a lazy do the cotting day had left one. She ten a Quacots and the key street on the get your delay. A wrong, say, me, Quincy in the good at Dijon. Italos in Lenny de Quago Jacago and issue. Mr. Speaker, the Tennessee can de query in the good at the kicking a tule, cause as you keep query could quagetia, quagetia all. Nashi society government neatly see the order as an ahoti gatitlia. Thea tila masi any then, Tennessee can dish you need de quaze casigo doesn't beyond the D. Cut Tennessee got a thing. He do can dish dog to this. Mr. Speaker, like he this then a dandigo in the issue. Housing policy program is using Tenagalandale, Tennessee condition, Sona the Ganagandi, Naneshu. Condition, dirty income taxes is the Kyoji dirty. Mr. Speaker, Tizakid here, Tizakid, Gazanda, and Yamiza Kisi, Gozati, Tinakotazaki, the Kogazanta, the ones at Hitler. Not any day, Markada. Da du Kenny Ducent Quenzakia and the Masi. Masi Great Slave. Masi, Mr. Speaker, the 19th Assembly, Yun Day Don a coup COVID Akon de Mr. Speaker, a Kuro Magain Daddy. Jean Kezi cabinet is again as a Kezi Kogonto is 2019 is UN declaration that indigenous people got booked. Is you want to Canada, I see you Higgy. Website again la has Jean Modati. Kotaka and Eziko Galagan target the indigenous Kezi, Kotemekanani Taz, Kuliagujili. Not Chazul, the GNWT Kotagan, the Indigiti, Continisni, or in let. But the website you take directly, the federal government Zatagat India, the Canada, Yitagi, the Kizu Zatagadin. She's a KC, Contisi, the human rights indigenous people, is the Kigatan, Okono Guy is he. Yizikatu Leone, Zunuzi Agatia, Kotazu, Diketi in Lendi, Konao, the Honeta. Concession is you go to it, canteen is you are getting late. Declaration take candia that down. Car is yazin la. Now there's a key, a miazite, has on me town. Halati takes a key tamatatala. Tula down the assembly condisi go galaganda. To cut an esigo dito committee, dizeke one. Because you can visit the other letter, the Likitauti 2022. As well as Keza can do the federal Kezi, the federal processes, the Dandi target, the Dandi Galagite program, the Kezigan. The government la see Lago Tialia, the Tenecanti goes out this in Leni de key prime minister, she can do Metazat Lately. What's any day continue the federal government is going to Galagan that. That Tennessee was a good day, then a cutter as a case like he who can't die a second deal come curricho. Ia dia EIA got Tazatella, Talo sees a case, GNWT the Kenya. That is a continue de Megaita as a go. Indeed, then the guy was a premier cut indeed. This indigenous governments go Tiagiti, Tauti, Kimorati, le Tugote. Kagontin de la Dandia Kimoratine. Because they don't all of the condition, you dark on this federal government and Tulendi, Massin. Frame Lake. The Special Committee si la se estisa le priorities che okionda o kione. 2022 so ko kandigo na kesi la naga sateki with kandimen di quaita kochemagaita te ke gani de. Si ti due kandisi mezata den yo del da kandisi yatela. Da me la ka kandisi Magazan das go. Tiajiri zekeda tule megala ta zekizigala tantani teneja. Okuno kigago ze kaslon metsa zegiwi. Asi su laganda yundi su okigago ze. Nisi su la ne zekadeshin. Ti plan meganel ha kwenze kesi tade tia. Yigo ze adwa zatle ko zeni de jine priority. Zeni de tuidi atlanden nezwa. Dia tagulia go dize ke yigo ze kadani. A zone federal ze kadani down di se go ze le yunda 2050 se go zeni de. Di tu hutia go dia ta ze hin ko ze me ze honda ko di jia go de. Thai Universal Child Care that ya zone tu ta ge o di ze ke si yundi ministry si di ki ne zuyenda ye ga la intale ko che ne zuju kandi ye go guindele ko che DNC the treaty land entitlement that ke 12 government is usually chote ke NWT made in nation mekanata no te go senigo na ha no te go ya tiati kandi ende ne zuane chulai ko che tia zone ke Polytech University that ke ji asiate no te zeni de kandi de tule traditional knowledge method la tule andi ne sa ne zwa te le tule Yadina Zekalushi, the cabinera, to Tezeki. That is a Kiana Hikatule, because there was a Catule city on the Dimasi.
Statements. Member for Thabacha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the priorities of the 19th Assembly is to increase regional decision-making authority. And that is something that I have always been a strong proponent of.
Regional Hijana condition at Goza make a good idea on Kotas casing. I see the Chaku Gidisi was a see on this senior gate. Devolution Lacana Kimikurajon. Could the Chats casilla. Then a cutter adds a go a Gallagher da territorial government to go Gallagher. If she owns a any day, Guli is a case here. The government Northwest Territories. As yet, the regional center see Kotagoda Telesi indigenous government go Gallagher does go. Mr. Speaker, now has the government see the orders are county see. Ko Gallagher does go. Because any day Kotagoda Chili's oil, Sago Zauti, in Denizia Kotago di Charles oil, it's a Kigazan does go. Tagoda, the seeds a Kizim Senia, the Tini de Kotago di Charles, 18 day, not as the Chula. Regional the Kigazan da. India sees any at the Kega, Estion Delindena government any day. Gulia the Liatulan, the contain the government North Territory down the Gallagher that the Kizigan, not share the Lias go. Contain the Zosa sees any at the cheesy, Senia the Tiatuli. Tizeke condition less Stavasi, the Zoo Guagone 20 Tetula see condition again. Candio Tauti, Modati Legi Tekeo. Kota says the indigenous government in Liasin, Quago de Yi, Candidate, not a premier Tadio Canandi, much Mr. Speaker. Masi Hay River South. Mr. Speaker, indeed, that I would say that it's a case. Da a si ze ke son pa ze ke zi ga zan da. Kandini de tule a si da ko zagen di a tule. Kandini de ko ta zui ko zagen di lang di. Son pa ze ke kwa de kia yin ka zo me kyo ri chon. The government ze ke de ko 69 million si clear infrastructure zeki kota zeki gad kandio kagondile tati zeki ni de tila kage ya yundago zena taji zeki gad tana ki kota zeki zi gandi huti de gagala ke ta zeki zi inte metao tia zego kandio kagondile
constraints and development as they move forward. This government, in its mandate, promised to reduce the funding gap, which is a good start. But what we
the government see la the county the kyo say ke le money ze ke the county ka go chale ta lo si the ke ga tan da a ji go ta sa la ze ke sin county si me ze an ne zu sa ko ta sa me ta go zao di a the county ndi le the government see ka the ka ko ta ko ga la ta ke ti ka ke ti ta ti money ze ta ti mo da ti chue le the program the ke ta service the ke the county rugan tani de yundani da go gani de la dang di gun lia the county a si ze yana ala zan dang de le dene si go ga lai ta jo de si na xia go ga lai ta ti na ga la gan da the government do Mr. Speaker at the county ga gan da zo dang di go sa gan di ze ke ga ni de dene si county go ta zan di ne de on ne zo tu liang Andiana hin de di tioza magai ta tule tandi gala ta ze kesia di ze ke juka ron ze kesi government ze kesi ga zan da federal government GNWT indigenous government was a Canadian government di a ron ye ka ga na ta ze go hi de mena ni ta Mr. Speaker, the government say ka the laga la ganda tu nyoni de haron esi ga ganda zo di somba ze kesia haron the nesi go as niya no the minister da du kenendi masindi.
Thank you, member for Haver South. Member statements. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I empathize with
22 with their priorities, the other song. Sisagani de Ajiri take lagaita, na laga laita ni de 8 years ago. Tati take Jimmy Honda to the Jimmy Hutli like go. That GNWT take a good leader at in Lani then is right. He got the COVID the Honda to Catholic. Nakika da si the KZ priority take a right as go. Si la Gio Daisy says Gatlante. Is the priority the KZ clear as si the Keta Mawana Thite any day, she is in Massinesia, and do a cagon delay. Tanti Mora the K. The the causing the K de co, says it Liane de GNWT to Kagel. Is Yares, Ajili the K. She thought the clear you does it only the K. Then Mr. Speaker. Alosia si se le ne zwaze le ani de kamera za tanu ni ta go na the budget program service hulia thitli se na thitli as go hajini geni de se keza ga ita go.
that is the reality. There is no way to tax hundreds of millions of dollars out of the people of the NWT. If we want to develop our own priorities, we can't wait for the federal government.
Timeza go under the federal government and I did ya go already. Candia si se titlani de ida naki kultia titlan de zon. Universal child care the care just and chudo much easier. The budget got and tiny de ne zuazule. Government a case as he con nigni or sisagasule. It's a case got and tazon. Ta ne zuazin lani de tule. Go to God. That's a case got and tiny de. A si senia de tigan, seniors was in la program service case, say Kadit Liani de Lati Mega. Ajila Date, Mr. Speaker, Magaita Zagon, Ajida Tadite, Aji Sedi Liji Gotea, Messeni Itinde, Okigai Goten, the two Magalaitan, the Masin. "26 months ago, she John, Candy, she, like government, need to it. Ajili Teke, Tule, Seniti Ate, she can't easy Gatan. She take she, Aji Galanda, the Kiji Metasoda, Candiasan. Ajogulia was a Letekiani, de Candigo Giago, Ulani de Nezua. Candines Osatule, Nezuna Laga Laitan. Tana he Candisi. Illegal like on the occasion. Members, the assembly the occasion, Soji Candisi, Cote Yagin de was a Yagin Diato. The Kikati Leni de Kulia with the lady na Quenish, go senior de Annie de Kulia de Leani de Cazalia gone. 631 days Kakalanaga, Sela. Seiko delle Zekiati Quenzeke, the Koni de Housing Corporation is Igulia de Liazago, Arjon the Kenny de Tute Gotlin de Candinas Agos Iti Adule. "631 days Nizagutele, Itati the Kegatan Tazo, the Quenzeke, members that I get a key, members in the Goldinia, Hadia Cabin with again Dinezo. Na hete gaude dia tule 2021 se keji gatan da khuje ke gani de moni diani de magai ta so government de oze ki lu khayan di che si son bagi wasi di khuje ke la ta gon dia ji te ke gatan da so the cabinet son basi se lan de ne juati 2019 je keji si di gandi ku liao ze le tule Higulia Sitlia Dulon, the Gotlin dear, and in Nakesa, the Nesiquaga like Tajimasina Heginisia. A Jean Candide can Dadeti, as he climbed in this year. Da Gulia was in there to the assembly to Kigani de Megaitas on 2022. Da Catule Cotelian, da Candi Shutule, Quata Tieni there Naki. And did it take Gotlin date and a color as in his Hitler as one the Massin. Massin, Mr. Speaker, the mental health education, Narcota education Gatanda. And dear Mr. Speaker, na hete guided the utility, Buffer Delta. This education, Kala. Magatanda Tijekisia. Taji Tekena Tiundi, Chiquacone Simonani, Tiundagoa, Duni Nakputekesi, the Quet son Yagundi, the Chiquacone Zigo, Mitimonanis. Seriding G, the Goganda. Cause Casey got on the gone. The court tweeted checked the Honda Comona the end. I'm out to the lab. Quenzecure County, Koa Quayagun is the Honda County Kaku, a common accusation. Mr. Honda Huti, and she that the Ozageti. Got you. The she was shit the tuition. Tauti William and the common accusation. He take a washer. Degag is a kinder the Ozan is Johanneson. Nakota that sells a case. So I see resource got sell. So I not out dile. Kakandi not any debt the Oza Galagite. Masigo needs a Galagande. Social service. Doctors the case. Can't easy the tissue. Cautly Galaganda. Can't easy go sight as a go only. Online program mental health first aid conditions the Kegas and Dazago. Gini does also to limit our quotas again. Government, the other side conditions agenda, 대 오즈 칸디 작은 디인데 저 코터제게 시디 칸디 위 칸철이 신이가 전다지고 내가고 자우디가 이제 계시오 나들의 제제게 내주아지 대제게 대 오즈 내주어의 고야 티다자 이니데 나의 원다지 미겐디리티야 나대 헬스 미니스터 다도 케넨디 마신 나 핸디 마신 Mr. Speaker Archie Stevens 해시 클라브 다음에 군님 1950 그때디 디아디 Archie 시아 마켄지 델타시 모티지 코네죠 Archie 라티 해시 디클레 퀘자디 그때 residential school survivor on 이따가디 아저씨 고갈란다 Archie 그때 sergeant 힐리 소마가 모다티 아디지 갈라간다 이디디 메타니 모티지해 아 존짐 나스다시 우티네즈가 아티 네즈슈 내가 아시지 칸디시 칸디 에갈란다 데게샤티 나제 메사 메아네즈 트리케탄테 카티 고자 조제니데 다게 사고 제시 아디 나제시 카네타 다게 스트리케니데 사고 자 아디 무리 아디메가 산디레 메사고 트리케탄에 데니데 카 카스티키아 코니 나이덴디 다 아시카니 데제키 아이다 모티시가 슈칸디 티키나니 모티시네 주켄디 디 캠트 케시고안에 다 지제 케시라 아디 모티시제 메치지제 키오티메 그거 오진에 주켄디 사고자 근디 메트웨네 타샤 이주카 이지테키아 아치메 모신 우티에 주이 예디차 데리 코제케 코아자 고제야 아치시 이지시 마시 제니사 에콩자 자오 에니비자나자 고제네게 따나 해줘있다 다카티 자카데 모티시 간디 헤티자 my granddaughter 슈자세자 다 에니비자나자 에콩 my granddaughter healthy there. Itaji tekia my lifestyle is the wasn't as well. Dene Zhatıé tweaking Hindi and the RTC the October 2nd, 2021 Mahule. Moti is Masi, the Hedley Quenteke medical staff Masi Kogeti. A coup magodi unit is it. Ajomoti is Masi Kedundindi. Masi member and they cardi di my family mega member statement.
Returns to oral questions. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Acknowledgements. Oral questions. Member for the Nukput.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All question no nakput. Masi teacher la mental health seki si na hoko tateki ko. Ministry situe na zekati. The mental health seki si bo for delta seki si. Tandi ko ko tu situe na zekati di kota ko da tsel seki si si region seki arisi ni nakput ji ni masi ni. Ministry of Health and Social Services Masindi. Ejitu kotseshi gatandala koni kotate kesila face counseling kesi ko ajon WTG Bolford Delta. Tise kesila ka magatanda mental health kesi di COVID-19 se honda monichiane. Tukte ajon esi kesi ajon de zeke. I joined days that can't see the COVID-19 ye the deal. the Ozamake Hutiakoti, Tina Nahina Ganide, Dako Tasi di County Community Council go Zaiti, Itati member, Mananendi, TC County Laka, NWT Health Line Ahetse, Kota, Tenet Son County online service, Kikandi Galaganta, Shugulian, Kota Shuti, special Beaufort. Delta mental health support KC Kanji Katili Dati in Dene Zhatıé Sendi Masin. Ajila Gakala Tule Tute Seriding Gila Sante La Gala Kandi Yasa Lai Shitile Go Zao Diendi Masi. Masi Mr. Speaker, 80 programs the Ministry of Health Hati Asia Tila Kati Ka Jojima Samba Kanita. Tetegao de Zizekezi, Asiju, Seneyagi Ti, Ajidi Zekezi Department, Dago Zao di Zekiani de Gosana Department, Chicago Zagan Diani di Zekia, di Nazi, so as a Sazeketao, in the Nazi Zezekish. Taka Siton, Dago Zao di Zekezio. Candigo Editisi, Candisi. Dene Zhatıé go Zao Dene de TRC Dago Dene Zhatıé Kanji Kosa Land the Masin.
Member for Nunukput.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, we're really lucky to have IRC that handles the money. But I really think what we should be doing, Mr. Speaker, is giving the communities an opportunity to.
Kotago Nigut only the Kade de Gala Tazaki Agin to RC. Kinditera on Tago Gizena Lazanesua. Continue the Tiesa Tule, Hajigini, the Suna, Tekagetini was Itia Tulian. And that's one part of the they choose any day minister, Situle, the IOC second day. Because any day Tule, the Kotazi, the Sombazekio, Kandigo, second day, Tule Sani, Kegalagan, Danesu, and the machine. Mr. Speaker, see, Andy Modishaw IRC the KC, the somebody was a cut out the Kenny de Catule Mo IRC the chair the ghost. Got any day down this song by Chico with the Kina the cat in the see, the other shoe Metasambania the other care Catule the cat in the machine. Digital mental health programs la tutte gotti in dei la danti che am chiaro già ne senti. Massimo Speaker. Ka asilson yundani nite tu tati che si cantia ko zaiti ale ti koti si che kandi si go kandi che si ko zaiti ko ze then she kandi si residential treatment tower sound treatment che ta e ko zata diti is che then she nagede che che na ki kandi go is then go asiwo go seni zeni de kandi taya the land that the ozan de kandi go to la tage ni chume landi ni de the mental health case ya da is the case da is the care members here on ye kanuta ko zeni de with constituency a target the Zakati de Tule Metzaiti is the Kiati Masi. Masi. The Bacha. The sea senior the teacher Kizigazanda, the government lost territories, the case, government the case, the case la, then she can't do, senior teachers, walk with an attorney, you got an Italian got and does go. The department the case, the Canadian affairs the case, justice man the case, you and anything. Mr. Speaker, the case or Masiat. The case got on Dani de la Tule Mecanita. The manager she go out with the ten, because they can't do it. That go out on it, Kanas, Dalo sees the kitan, can't do like it is a Kani de. Can't do it, on a him, a down it and a good idea, because a down the Megain Dassi government, the Kiko Galan, that the Kenny de cars or Yuri or Zitake that. Can't do it, you can't get the Atulo or the machine.
Or Indigenous governments to do more than just staff training to promote regional decision-making authority in the NWT. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Thabacha. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely. And that
Mr. Speaker, Masini. Aron site kizin ti wokon desin ka goago de ne tezeke head. Yetiago olendi tu te kotlin deer. Hadia metauda adesi. Hajili teke zigatan tate kezio. Kazajila site liatule Masini.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. Oral questions. Member for Thabacha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during question period 2 weeks ago, the Premier mentioned a contractor being hired to go into the communities and
Premier de la contract si kotazazel de Islendi. Ta Premier, is the Kirasitule Mona Gute. How many la contractors again? How many it is, because he has it a key. Kirsanathan. DJ consult na contract auto, you take care. Ta si taigo on. It's any day 101 manager, because she can't do Galata any day. Ka, and this is a contract auto, can't do Galan, that's a key counting in. Because she taigo any day, Tishima was she go say a good daddy, say. Na kikimi kyori jole taundi me ajumi te kade zeze kezi. Kandi wa kala me ta kanila. Kandi yeza kala me seni yaitia. Adi ka tisa me kai ta tu le ti te kezi wande masini.
Thank you, Madam Premier. Final supplementary. Member for Thabacha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again 2 weeks ago, the Premier also mentioned a working group being created to help increase regional decision-making authority.
Premier working groups authority gets yazi wo guinde. Hamize ke la galaganda ata ti kweze ke chuta wo zo gatan ta se ke gande. Amila me ta se oyen ni masi.
For Thabacha, Honourable Premier.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the working group, or planning committee,
The working group planning committee ze ke regional Zekianda. Volunteers ko gala ko kanita. Shota kandi gala deputy minister si seni yati. Amya kite zekesio. Kantiaze. Ta kantini demitse wala sikatule kondisi ko tati te oji tsagendia tule. Sonde. Izekia. Ta ka January melota Hende kakar mugo ta tatule is the case. Adene de a rosi is a lazy morat. That is the Kigantia morat do with a machine.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. Oral questions, member for Decho.
Decho. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the member statement is how the Nakota Education Authority the KD the Kizigatan. A she Medjoa than a teacher than the Takatale, the member from minister. He do the Kizi Mekoni the Kizila, Tandi Gogalaganda and Masin. Mr. Speaker, do the education, the education to go elegant education. A jiggy, a townty go on it education. She like Raganda, the superintendent education. I see the government go on it education. The member at the car. Slide. Dagi members each issue, Dagi Kunoga take it, consume Koni Sigaita. He hit a kigan, Dasila, the Kigani de Asitlo got Lazasela, Dagi Guagudi, and their volunteers Yagudia. Kutsagan is a case here. The Education Act, the regulation, Takago the Gaudi. CEC Kandi was there, Sinigia. Is your Gotata enjoyed it. Hardly could I remember that easy coming cut yet, till the go walk on it, the key. Could they did you cut to the training get a count, they also got out this any Dene Zhatıé anything. They then does easy good as a leatule. Then the county go like that the case. Because as you see, I get this a key any day. He can't is out and out or till Jacques and the machine.
Decho.
Must see, Mr. Speaker, and must see to the minister for that. But I really hope they follow up with through his departments to the divisional education councils that this is a very important.
This occasion, the machine this is going to Mr. Speaker. TEA education. He down the go on it education. And this is Tazi go out on a TDI Raganda. Down the go check out the Tiago. Go to Aji, the case gonna take the license, and then they to touch you go on it to the UK go get the end the machine.
Dene.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a two-way relationship. The DEAs are the ones on the ground.
DEA, the Tiagalagandan, the Tiaji, the case challenge the security. That the education leaders, the case, DEA, the case, the Tiago Lagua, the Tiana Zogan, the Gandisa, Tagoti, the case, Mikure, Atule. Tagot any day, Catule, you only go to Kaditi, the Agitagin, the case. The Department of the Education Act, a hard tag elegant down. That's he ties was very good and neatly. He's a curator. It's a G, the case, and the Gogalita down the Legalita, the case, that is a good easy. Car. As long as you got at the Tatsan, down the near the arts case here. It's a government case in Thai could be. And you call it, say, could say, cut a shaz go, said large case here, machine.
Questions, member for Decho.
Must see, Mr. Speaker, must see to the minister for that. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure.
Must minister. Kotago di charge killa down the go, Kotago the teller down there. I see closing on you night neither. Teach. Should start the case here. The Sego at your daddy. So start the teacher the case. Who is the other see the talking with shall go. 한주 카티아즈 랴조 당디 레제야긴데다 당디 레자즈 디제키 간된 minister 시투레 나제카티 시굴랴고 차다 디제케지 원 마시
are placed with their age-related peers. So if you are of a certain age, you would be placed in a certain grade. And if you
단내때 고 가예다 간디 grade 니고 지량래 간디 사연 다 디제케 간디 니데 가시틀라 간디 니데 뚫레치 구하시 단 메가예 메네 대시 레가라 간데 아뚫레 고제니 데 뚫레시 에세 아시가라 간다 뚫레한데 이다오 간디 아시타 다 간디시 저 jurisdiction 주디에 다게티 the community Northwest Territories case did you gandhi gaganata jurisdiction gandhi taji khite case gatsan dani de ko tsan dini de tule ko zaudi yini gi deshi go zayan ta kha asil sonsin la mesela tijekega ko go tane tijekega ni de kandi go ko tinju khai kyogire jale 단디 지크아 내존이데 가데지요 고자시 코니고저 추기니데 디자고 저 거지 그 따져서로 디샘레지 간디아 이게 갈간다 에듀케이션 간데 간디 시곤디니지 오니 데네즈와나스 한딘데 온자산에 좀 메시리체 니주메 교제를 좋아 둘레 디고 디제케지 다운디고 온제케지 오연 자 이게니 제주나 제카게 디아 둘레인데 미니스터 마시루시 디 Education Act ki konya 라제케지 Tag Melanisi, the DEA members that she can't do the Tegut. Kotaza Kasigan Lee to Taza. Kadi says that you are Yanni that DEA condition can a tiny little down the other. Minister, she tulina the Cadini. He has wrong with the Kasi, work staff the KDA the Kasi, Kosajiri la Galaganda. Tandira la ko galaganda dice que the cemetery porgunlian ka roshi the education body shi go tigute a ronzake the regional zake CBC go zaiti a siklon information center I think the CBC geshu Ona ko sana shi kandi si o kandi radio geni de o goje gute kandi DEC di jugo taza de la si go se agon ko zandi ne se ani de ka tu go zandi di ka gini zende ade ta ko ti se ke si la kana zu tane ta gele sona di ka go ti du the members in the Kaya Kirishon, you go going to Sunday. Tati Kesi, Handi DA members, I see. Relican died the hotel in the commons at the Kazatias go Katian. And you are gala go like that. I did the Kesia. No go out that honey Lathi as go on the Massimo Speaker. TNWT que la tandi ndaze ko que la se tise question gatanda a de sindi machine premier me zero mo going down the special needs care committee chi ta ko gidi kya go kantigo di tiesa go din dia member ni li sin ta ti je ke si ti dia kanti je ke si yekyo ke de jo kanti gala zan ta je ke si kanti je ke indigenous government je ke ga ni de ta go je de xiang de ta kan diang ta ta lo si ke tu le na sa de da ya ze go on ta ro je ke kan diang de Kasi suga lai ta di indigenous government go ta di nyoni ta ze kesi ga yan. Ta na kesi la ka la ta ga nini chu ko ze menta de kwa ta mega lai ta ta di government go ta gen dia tu le si me ka ne di tu. Ta di government le si ka di si la tu le go ta gen dia ne. Chen WT la three member agit. Ta ro si go ta za se landed le the state of heaven. 다 디제 계지 간디시라 뛰어고 싶어도 코인 다고 아니 데카 간디 시갈은 다 뛰려네 디제 계지야 매주 legislative customary sounding machine
Things are moving forward, and I will give the Premier kudos that I have heard from Indigenous leaders. They do feel that there is a lot more discussion happening.
칼라시 소음게 고전 대화를 되겠니 아주 디제케 다두케네세 디 residential schools eke mentalities 타제케 premier cut indeed indigenous government organizations eke 가그net 간디오 이제케라 시투레나 헤제카티 어떤디세 온데 두 디제케시가 어제 다이토라 무니제 연디 마신 마시 United Nations Declaration tekeyese oson the indigenous government teketakin disi gonasean sitandi meni shore the nation diago tatsela koje edi disi la kata sigi dini dekatu meki gosendi masindi It's che raji di son balayon danigini la dice che si GNWT dice che kandi di murdered indigenous women and girls che jiware sindi masin son bashi danigi la desiago o le coca son basel la de desi tane 고제 구이때 근데 카라 아제 계시 고 대슈에 나 제국인데 고디디 간디니데 카틸레 고가 신고 호텔 가용디나 디고 제국때 제 계시고 제 이나게 때가 간디하고 하고 다 간디디 디제 케메세 데클레이션이 가라 미케디 초초이레고 제 다이도 모니 지슈 미케레 초초이레 연디 마신 이 선바제 계시라 오늘제 니즈니라 다지 제케니데 네 다네데 어디지 모즈니 시제케니 자질란네죠 이 2022제 계시된 배모라 우티하기디에 안디가라 다제 계시야 가라일린 제사 리가고 제 노데디 이야니 갖고 잘된디 마신 indigenous government 하고 제 가리지야 둘레 아시 소제 계신라 카 소심마세 라운데 디솜바 제케
that we are working together strong.
그사 고사 제가 라이다 디 간디 시시틀 제케가 아니데 legislative act 제케시 고시시 고치 고사 큐라데 디 history territorial government 제케시 아조지 간디지 디 리주시 고가 라이다 Kandisi la Sansim, Sagu Chant and Dimasi. Monfrey. Jiteki Didi Meta Sago Dion Tia Kandu Kagondile, Tenesi Kandizan Zoom, Kokizendin Zuguanuti Ale, Kandu Kagondile, Kotaresa Gozatia di Sombazeki. Koha Department C, EDTC Gozagan di Indonesian. Da Minister Situle, Dalo Sizeki, Meta Maka Sombazi, Tule Kotago Zagendi. Is the Quentin and the machine. Mr. Speaker, Kotasi, the Quentin la Catula government ke Eteganyugi a Quengo Conite Tani de emergency Gatani de Ka Candisi project Catule Dandi target is a KZ Sombagera Kentuli target. Kotazeki di Tia, Kotazagon, the Sombazeki in the machine.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Mumphrey.
Thank you. Can the minister commit to working with partners in communities to ensure vulnerable homes are provided food hampers?
Situleti the Kiziko Tago is Kogalagan Dati Moshes and then the machine.
Thank you. That's a loaded question. I wish I could say yes, but right now it's not within our bail.
The Seattle, the call to Kagondi go all. Solandi Tago the Kitakizio. Sardindi. And your indigenous government go Galaita any day. Kotashika to the go Galaita. And your friendship center the Tiak Handigo Galaganta. And it lets us dizzy one. The Tia. Somebody the Kenny dinner his hombagoita. The community in the first section telecandio catule Gozata di government Kezi Candida using one in Israelis and the machine.
Can the minister support communities to purchase food hampers and emergency clothing for cold weather?
The food hampers the minister was on the end. Ka son bagorani ke ti kandi te kesiga galatate kandigo situé kalendene de siare dane kandi se otaken dini de ka masigo ni siasgo ti te kesia si ban meiti velista ti se ke galaita ko sana ko tar kandi na he galagan Tati community kandi and Tati Quagan died in Israel and the machine.
Minister, final supplementary. Oral questions. Member for Hay River South.
Hay River South. Minister, indigenous funding that came around that is it clear to see Magazan Tani the municipal funding gap the Kayan. Minister Kalusinet. As you Magazan Tani de see to the city, the other letter. That minister the KZ, and this is methods of the land that are down the Yekerendi. Tanaki Kandi could cut out any day, Catalias or that Minister Makarusi. Minister Kandi the government policy the KZ could say down a GD criteria than a yen in the must. Masi member EGTKC, DCTKC, and ita 2014 Ekuro Maka NWTTKC, Ekle Galagan da Ike Galagan, because the Dagger the Cruise TKC, because administration choose department go Galagan. That took the Condagila, a scene Dashi, Ike Galagan Dashi Lati, you own a GDTK, New Zealand other KZ, community government TK, because Ajidi ko taze ki kagana tani da ko taze ki kwen kayandi ze ki ziyo ajoko te galagenda.
We at the regional level work with the municipalities, and we also try to work with them about the facility.
Na Shishwa municipality ko galaitati, kandia ko galaitandi. Minister, agidi la te 11 modati, koze agidi la liga hanet esi modati la tu le sezi leyendi. Twenty-one, 22 ze kesi gani de 6 million, koze ji second part ze ke esi atade tia. $3 billion on that year. Then they could eat ya. The can't dizzy doesn't 7 million here guy, the can't do that. Remember, the Catholic got it.
That not that easy.
Can't go more than you did it, Catholic and then the machine. Minister said, I think that Ka is the order that liaison but the KZ, Konita the Kianide, federal government the Kitule, Candigo, DZKC la Tati Magandale, DZK. The minister, that is the Kandi Katele, Gani de, Cosmete de Gani de. Étant dit, me rassasier là, tu grandis de que c'était les antennes machine. Mr. Speaker, two funding policies de KC, c'est titre, me gondie, me que galata, 2023 guiné maroutea, Candigo, et j'étais que gagné des business plans in des clear hunter me got in a town. Has Ronzeke. Member Kokati, as a federal territorial municipal Zekizika, Kotatsala. The department to its own Yasik and Dizzy Gargan at Tazi Gargan. Got a member you were going to federal government will kite. Met the department is he la Galagan Dazila. Kandi Galagan down at the department la Candiodele. Itati health programs the Kede Koni de Gulian, federal Zekega. Taji Zekega Zanta. Tati Zekezi Gazanta, thousands on Bagwat on the Kandi federal government Kandia Galagan. Me Oza, so the guy who clear I tell you, Kogagi Antele. Is a Kimenandi and the Masi. The pandemic is federal funding that you have that car. Some son Baulia China data one dear, or get Anya the dear. Tati Nakina Metada Naki government see. Saying is you knew a new job. Got saying the Catuli did the Kisi Ulia thickly. Did you take Gotlin there? And then they at the landless you had. Minister, Ajidi la tule, the candy son pas de question, Dene Zhatıé the funding gap the kia. In Glendale OTE la go the son bana jati yen. Mr. Speaker, kai thiadindi the kota the kis se ga thiati. Okyono vai on the condition make a line da ka department see I did go line down. I did the case. 30 member 30 the case. I did without the alley. I did the case last guy any day 17 million or quota is on the 30 the two the case. Canada song by Matthew 2016-2023 song by Mekanita. I did the case. TNWT you call federal go galagenda. TZK investment zekega. And Dene de Dule Metan Dadazi Diaji Kotagini Danitia 117 million who program in the Nigini of 2018-2028 was that. Taji Zekir Kantiagin La. Kocha do federal government go galaita with a good day. Kocha any day. The federal minister is in headed it that allo sitake that it's out any them that society on it. Camley, Massey. June 2021 the Quinta the government is in that. Kulia Gutelendi. Antigo Tatigu Lisha Gus Challenge. Mr. Speaker, Minister Housing, Situle Natse Kunde, the social development Zekezi down the Queta the Zekezi Oshu. Masin. Masin, Mr. Speaker, Housing Corporation Zekezi. Ka Ega Gaganet, Kozuka, Nahete, Netekadutini, Kununi, the Zekin, then the Masin. Masin Minister, that the standing committee sees the Kezi, Kaji the Kini, the Yagagan Dagini, the Zekezi one. Housing Corporation the committee as a whole, the Housing Corporation the Justin Minister Sikandi and Dagondinio to take out in days. You may take a timeline though. Tight ola Keta Intania Zichuatime, tight ola Mikir Gondi, Nizi Ara, the turn than is Chien. Massy Mr. Speaker, Massy Member, Taji Kezi la Tathilion de Quinta Kezi, Yokayati. Housing Corporation are wrong, Kagana, Tizekezi, because I see Sondi, Yagin da, Cantigo, method laws ago, Tizekezi. Housing Corporation is Zika, Koto Galagin da, the committee Zigakilia, Kotana did he in the machine.
Oral questions, member for Camley.
Starting to feel like it's my birthday, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minister just said something pretty amazing. She said that housing is the #1 priority of this government. And
housing is the #1 out in the Kasagasinyati. The NWT Housing Corporation Tekezi, Tanti, Tekezi, Somba Tekezi, or Nam Tekezi to Yetagin. Because the cabin la down the Yetagitia. And you Tanti Gogagi Aji Teki or Mikuru Jonathan Dimasi. Housing Corporation is the Somba Tekezi. That go Canada, she go joking the Tizekea. Any day, how they car in Danity Trini, they car is more in Danity are any day catule make a galata. housing corporation chu ka condition e ka kana ta ti che ke ya da si di la ka federal che ke ya de ti che ke si ju da ju ko ta na di ya zo go ye di ma si member Camley in the 18 years ko la ka me ke di cho de ta ko ti che ke si kan di o se TNWTG he continue to the common good job. As you take KG, that is a KG come out TNS. The number one priority government KG. She near the development. Mr. Speaker, NWT Housing Corporation. See, I see corny you that need you. To NWT Housing Corporation KG. The corporation you took in there. Some by seeing Koniji, some about cookies is a case. That housing corporation is she. You can't do the case. Some by the some back Kaganatal to Quintakia. That housing committee, she too the condi and that it can issue. Got the assembly, and I would take with 80 machine. Mr. Speaker. As you take housing corporation take any day, Katile Megaita housing corporation take here. Attend the housing ministry is it take a tule, as you detain that a legislative head la tulisi, can do in the Nigia. It's a Jean Gulia the Lianite, Katule Cataloma Ag Hezela as a go. Taji Castle let a kegani day. Is in the metara alini in the nuclear one machine. Frame lake. The Sagot Mogose. Tandida Laki can't see it. Megot a talagot and McKenna to tell minister. Museum take la tandia Megona take had in Dile. Ye don't do Messate or she take waters in the machine. She can't do Mezu Gulia till they are two. Tis a case here, Gulia till 2 Gulia till they are gone. This is a can. She 2 cut their gone. The Gulia that let the cake and then Megosa public GNWT would take it and there's all. Because the little Prince of World heritage centers in Ka Mentadi quite up. Could say, I see Mentadi Gulia till the museum take. Member Kai Gurish. Is it a case in La Ka, Sigo till the other go come. Is a case, that's a term Galata go. No, she see. A government take Magaita. Ita Mezi Gulia till the case. As he 2 cut their go on it. Ita Tila on. Santila at the Liani, they call Nazini Terraga Calamendari Galite and the machine.
Funny anymore. Some of us have visited the museum and seen the problems firsthand. If our government actually made culture and heritage a higher priority, I think we would have had a new museum by now. And that's exactly what the Yukon did, Mr. Speaker. Does the minister have a renovation or upgrade?
Minister, she did a case, she now got a case, and she made a plan goonly. Got a kind of Yimega some battle like the case doing at the cut the end. Ajite got and the high priority young lives on there. Could lease there with young life only get a scene that she can't DC guinea there. I see metal the other leaking it. Prince of Wales on there. To the good in there. That Ajite the Ajite so wagon down the list. Go walk with an aesthetic method land. Members come Curijo. Nico Candidate Kako Tigam Curijo. Tajit La Cati Kizimano dated the Kamuana with 2020. Taketamu Goita was a Chitile Mewaja Diane. Candini de Tizekesi. Haji Zekigala Tashi Gandhi magazine down. Is it too shuakala si galata? Cause a Heshu Kaji Zekes a thousand lazi the Kini Murati and Dekakoto Candini Nita. Da is it a kende as one see the members see the Tizam at the Yukure George go. The Kandi see the Konikala then the Nizan Zekariti Ayen. Is a do Kaikoni, only the machine. Minister Massey. The honors on Bani K, the funding Tekigani federal government, Jathika, the ordinance in Unita Tekigani, the minister situated at Zekati, Tandi at the Tekigani, the she mega son by she, and you the Atule Yanti Massi. Mr. Revenue, she, Ka, do guy the Kakatale Atule. Prince of Wales Heritage Center, Kuliane. Ajon the Kesi Lati, Province Territories the Keditia, Kotata the Lan, third party the Kish, is still a third funding that. So somebody GNWT, Ta Gozaken Dio de Letize Kesio. Ta Gosana Siga in the Latule, Gozati the Kiane, Katule Catale. Massi, Minister Massi, you see, is a case. Somebody that's a liazakitu metan. Adio the Nesi Gandisi, so easy to Kozan, Kozakan diatulaji, Kigala Tazakian, Federal Zakisi, any day. Minister, Department Zaki, Shitule Mawokunde, the federal funding Zaki. Kozajira my policy method Tizekiga Hadesindi. Masi, Mr. Speaker, Solandi Meke Guinde Tizekesio, the Dandi Deputy Ministers here, Asia Tizekesia, the COVID related funding Zekesu here. That the Megasomba Kani Tanda heritage the Tiago Tata Somba Gotata. You can't see the KI project. We got Somba Gota. As he say now, the eat the cake and then Tadi Tiago the Somba. Indigenous government KD to Catholic and this one get a car and they must.
Returns to written questions, returns to written questions. Replies to Commissioner's address, replies to Commissioner's address. Petitions, petitions. Reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of committees on the review of bills. Reports of standing and special committees, reports of standing and special committees. tabling a document. Tabling a document. Minister responsible for the status of women.
Minister status of women, Mr. Speaker, TZK-CSE Daniel. Daniel grant contribution result 2021 Northern Mineral Sector Investment Annual Report August 2021 Public Account 2020-2021 Section 1, 2, 3 and 4 end. Daniel Tendi Masin. Masidin EGDKG Northwest Territories on Land Collaborative 2021 Report Gojaji Didi the 2021 Anti-Poverty Roundtable Daniel Chundi Masindi. Family Massive Tizeki Tasiti in Daniel Motion 483-2 Testing Missile in Canada Excerpt December 2nd, 1983. Motion 1586-1 Cruise Missile Testing Opposition Excerpt from Hazard March 5th, 1986. At the low-level flight deck issue is a got a table document 686 is a issue condition in the cruise missile testing deck March 2nd, 1994 deck in Daniel Chundi Masin. Minister Family, as you do, the Honorable Range India Bill 45 is a infrastructure the expenditure 2022-2023 Kodamaki at the end. Masin. As all nothing. I mean, the motion that is not. Ka Kodamaki at this Bill 45. Minister Framework, Camlake, TZKC, Range and the Bill 45, Appropriate Act Infrastructure Expenditure 2022-2023. See comment, TZKC Government North Territory, CC, Con DC, Tule, Bill 2023, TZKC got to and then is a tree and the Masin. Ka, TZKC got Maganda. The question is on the Hazo and nothing. Amelia.
Abstentions? The motion is carried.
Motion director. Bill 45 got the second reading. Bill 2329, Committee Report 2119-2, Committee Report 2319-2, and you have twin lake near Richia, Sikania Sandi, Masin.
What is the wish of committee? Member for Frame Lake.
Frame Lake. Massive. American is okay, the case. That is the case. All of the you any accusing here and the machine.
I'll now call Committee of the Whole back to order. Committee, we've agreed to consider Committee Report 21-19-2, Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment Report on Government of the Northwest Territories' Approach to the Mining Regimen Fiscal Review. I will go to the Chair of the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment for any opening comments. Member for Nunukput.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee's report was read into the record on November 30th, 2021, so I do not have any additional.
Individual la home, you won't go get their son didn't say to report the committee must see the scene. Tandi ye go setting in the education, must see Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. Do Kotakai the committee report 2119 standing committee environment the KC mining the Washington Takai Frame Lake Masi TKC Latio federal government KC Kandi New Guinea oil TKC Atandia to Tuisi Kandi mining on Daniki Chu TK Gardenia Tant on la Atelier TK the son by Sila the Kandi housing education TK healthcare TK Holland I thought Tisina Metade Arne TK that the indigenous government is a case got and does go TK the mining TK Gani Day the 19th Assembly see 1919 a kudos Gazanda Ejila Tisina he own economic development Zekian. Dalo si Zeki la the party says Kandi 19 Assembly see Kandi si the military report see Ike line down the secretary and Daddy Quine Dago with the Kigazanda. Tizeki Katalegani de Ka Mekatan Tani de Laisi the Kitagakota. Itaji the case. Cause you the benefits choosing revenues hey, the as the Kian. That the shareholders, job contractors the K as Rota Mesela to take out in there. You Kathutli need the mining to Kathitland in Israel. These are Gatanda. TC. Same with the on public services, there goes at their goal. Ministry, Industry, Tourism, the KC. Editia, Yigainda, October 2020, the take frame 19th KC. A KC Latikan, DC Gatan does go. Any issue, Makaya the TC as a go ending. He thought the Kandi, and they Megamoda has go. That the taxes the key, the Aronsi, Kandi Mesela. That the taxes the key, Ta Mesela, to take out in there. He thought the government, see. The Kandi going da go to DC government the DC Kago Tong was a Katadindi. That is a case wasn't done the Northwest Territories tax case Ka Method Lazo the Canada the jurisdiction Plaza. I met out the mining the Kigani. He thought it's a case Kandi going da that they do. He the KC la NWT the KC Kandi Plaza Sella. That is the KC Kandi Catalegani de Magatata Ragoti. The government seats out the Tizekirani de do Magatanda. That company see Kandi Kana Tiny day to say was our good contract the Kirani day you go to again the Azagon. TK production TK Mr. Shelter and there wasn't done. that the resource development team the Kegani de Ka Igaganda Zagodi the mine the First Nation Canada the Kirimethela Hajidi the Kigoze Tachaz the Kizi Song the department the Kizi Kandizi Igagenda and the only day. Because any day then Kandisi the Hashi la Kandi Kakwa get team members see la ka then that song Kandi town of guy was in mining industry Kandi Kyogirism. That get 25 years Kandisi go get it. And this is cake to Kyono Kontand. That the resource the Kezi Kandi the Kezi and Daddy Quaginda Koja Kandisi Gatanda. The government that is a case to take out in the case taxes in Diaja is a case. The government is in the only joint mining the case and the British the case in Rani de is you the cat yonder, Diajon Dega. Is in Daddy Quakin da. Now, on this, two limits the royalties, he got on them the tax. That team is a Kegoshu Modatility and the WT the case here. That PWC the case, Megako Tani de the federal government it is Ugandiage. That two is la mining the Kegani de Ka Kandian de Hale. Tila. And the blue tea the on. That is the Kizigatan Dani de 36% out of 22% and the blue tea got them 4% federal government. This is the Kigatan Dani de government 40 to 60% as I got some lady. Can't do Kakondile. That is the KC government. Mining revenues a case is Tiagin Lale, is Yitashu was a Tazago. Talo sees a Kita goes to the kids a Kegani de Kitazon making out at Tazago. That kids a K. TNWT the KC, resource the KC Gago Tazago. Hajidi the Kiko Tazaz the Tazi, government GNWT the KC, the Onze Jude. Itaji the Kishuma was a Tazagon. The Kandi the Kami got Tazas at Lago Teni then.
Question 2. Does the GNWT fiscal and regulatory structure maximize value?
NWT the Kelasi Kandi Ragenda. NWT mining physical regime the Kiayan. Government the Kela Junte. The government the son by sea, Megatan Tazago. What's a issue mesela? Question 3. Is the Kizigatan Tani de the Adi Medal Catalegani de PWC, GC Kandi Metaza Lago, the mining hit a wagon. Sanazesa Kandi line the government the diamond mines the Ketao, GC Kandi de la GNWT. Method laws go the duty to take out in the Kigani then. Question 4. Ji Kandi the Kizigatan Dani de Kandi Meta see the Kizigatan Leani de Kazigatan Dadu take out in there. Is the case la Kandi Zika Mega Ajidi the Metao the Kigani de Kandi method lion dago. That is the key like Kashimo Megona go Teagon or the Tizeke. That's the cat and the Murishwala ITI Kago to Ikegalagendati, the numbers. The ministry see the car, side Meteko Sekandi Tati, get us a Zenago daily. That is the key Kandian, the mining the Kizia. Because the Shaji the Kizia in that Lagi Murati Chole. Because as you remember regulations that Lagi Murati. This is a game I knew the I need ta du go zhe xi mining physical zhe ke xi kama gai da zgo a ron de zhe ke a ro zhe ke ga ni de kan di xia zhe le du lon di kan di ga ni de a zhe dia ron zhe ke xi yo kon de xi kan di tai de le zhe la da kan di me ka zhe to ni de government e di die sa ya ye le masi di de kan di ga la gin ta di zhe ke son ba zhe ke ta dan ni le masi ne se yi ji zhe ke di resource revenue zhe ke xi masi Madam Chair. Mr. Jacobson. The government territories the mining physical regime the public is here. Must
All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Member for Nunavut.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee recommends that the government.
The committee see Northwest Territories KCDT and revenue transfer and says the KC because Lendin is the must. I don't nothing. I mean, a motion that it. Government revenue Chicago and Daddy and did cut the motion done to questions and the joy and nothing. I mean, Lenny there. A motion that is done. And I put, I see, teacher committee seeing Governor Territory says the net revenue the KC Gargan data they got in there.
Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried.
Motion that is done. And I put the committee the KC Governor's Territory says generate greater mining revenues the KC when you and Dago and the R&D machine.
Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just
Frame Lake at the KC la car Coston at in law 27 million the 2020 2021. It is the KC car agent si tout est cotlindé au Tambour landé c'est diamond ko le maison basée à 35 billion.
Got a late start on the Heritage Fund, and the Heritage Fund is something that's going to be reviewed.
You should know what the target is the data. The assume 90 city, and then it's a check and then the Massey Madam Chair.
Abstentions? Motion carried. Member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move.
The KC Committee see Governor Territory says in the target indigenous government economic benefits that KC sharing of Massey.
You, member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, just briefly, I do want to.
The mineral resource KC, Hudson Tiny Day, the benefit agreement the KC, me was announced that there's gone. The candidates in London is the Northwest Territories, the indigenous government, the Kigani Day. Taji the KC Community, Lego Garsu, me was a tiny Dennis, the arch was anti any there in the machine. The Bacha. Impact Benefit Agreement the government Taji the KC la the Kini de mega mining case condition la midi they got with the Gisagatan da co indigenous community Gisa go tata la and Denizia is a key. Taji the case, Tita si kind of sella, the Dene Nahen they get good they get tea. Daya get the charge on the indigenous government get the day, then the cutter as a govern our goods. Tidy Tiago and Deon. Tai Theo Rani Day, the Tiasa, Cochen, I got to go cotton a tiny day, Cochilton day as a go, TJK. That is a candy day, mining the casing. Cotegard is the whole. You was a Cotecaritiago business, I go Dacanito. In Dago Rani Day. I see it long like on this cutter day on the TJK mining the Kigani day. Is as a tamer, this is as one candidates. That could you in a senate? Daggy. There was a declaration, there was a seat on the government that continued. There was a declaration on the others. That do let the ozen is rather. Mercy, Madam Chair. Young Live North. The cattle in the charts at Leon, the Dazo Duka, the Mogos and the Coiny Day. The Dazo government, the corporation, the Keta. Taji the Casey Kai, the other. Nahin Dal, Nahet Zesi, the Ozen is Jagged, na Ozen is Jaggedy. Candy the mind the Casey can't do a seat, so Metzel Desi are Duleon. Dule can't see Gazanta. The corporation, the Kegani Dende. That is a case gatten, Danny, they are wrong as she more 90 the Kegatan. That is how good this is a do take got in day the Kaza Legani Dendi. Indigenous government the Kegani day. Editia go Lagui Oz or the company the Kegani day. In Dago Gani day, the Tiesa Kotekata Tiazo, Nahilego, indigenous government. The Tia Hade de Ganuki Azagon, the Asi Cotasson Bati Zeki, on data the Zeki, the mine Zeki, Candias in land is Uganes and Yard. Kasi with the Azona Sin Damo Yauzin Dalet, Simo Yauzin Delezeki. So Candimen Dadi wasn't that Julian and the Massini. Motion that. Madam Chair, the committee see governor territory says public again. She the case there the Megasamba public is on the any day the more that to let the mining physical regime security. Family. Madam Chair.
Information about what the next steps are. There was the PricewaterhouseCoopers study done in October that was publicly released in October of 20.
Parties in the kind of the Taka Yugation is the water she died the weight year. And you come and get Galata. And you data the tiny dilla car megasatini the hours ago. The down dilla the regulations the case got and does ago. Because I see long and down DC lucky more yasa lala is you waters. That the department is seen. The Yagan Maganda. Because I megata ta, you know how counting is one the mercy.
Motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Member.
Madam Chair, team committee the governors to see Julie get now get the 120 days was or massive. Massive committee the KC 21-19-2 Standing Committee Economic Development the Environment Report Government North Territories the KC Mining the KN Massive the KC 21-19-2 the Economic Development Environment Report is Government North Territories I see the approach to the mining regime physical review. Merci. Committee 23-19-2 Standing Committee Government Operations Report Review 2018-2019 2019-2020 Public Accounts. New Chair, Standing Committee, Governance, the case was out Disney then Dakashian. The case Laka, two Tauti, make a quantity all in. Tatalosi, the case Kandi, the Masi. Committee, the case Kandi, Galigin Dandi, Masi. Do go that college, General Common 2019 through Standing Committee. AC Government Operations KZ review of the 2018, 2019, 2019, 20 the public accounts. See close out in it then. Taudi Hell Live North. Madam Chair, the committee sees the KZ. They see the KZ got on da. And this is the game of get out the theatre in the Massey. Hill Live North. Tati the KC car Magatan da Titako did the KC. You can't easy got on that dile. That GWT the KC. Without my watching, get out or making a good thing there. That the public account KC at the Sego. Kalase Odi. Can you see the general see? Can you see the public county city? Katil Katil. That do you see? Can you see line is your liness and you want to see the Massey?
To the motion, member for Frame Lake.
Frame Lake, Madam Chair. This is Kelas. She's riding year 6 years ago. Condition behind up. Good that you. Goodly than I got the Chira saying I would say Tlizeki. Goodly a good Garded Lalandi as in La Da Cashu. Mego now that Tlizeki can't get down as it la. He say more that the choile down the again Lazeki. Da si government say as ye already. The Senatutely, Kenatutly, Gary Kenati, is the chemical Janet said on the again like his guy seen. As she said, any day, she said, that's the only day Garo can go there only this. Motion. Question. As all the again.
All those abstaining. Motion is carried. Member for Yellowknife North.
Madam Chair, I move that this committee recommends that the Comptroller General enhance reporting in the public accounts of contingent liabilities arising from claims and litigation, and further, specifically, A, include a breakdown of claim amounts by category, and B, identify individual claims above a certain threshold.
The motion. Member for Kamloops.
The motion I end the Dukashi Kayati. I meet with lots of said lots of cases on the land is you and Sandy. The Cam Lake cases cars here and Zoom. Metata de India. Tis a case here. Chain the blue tea case. Then he committee come right that's a case. It is a case in the Nahet Tezagute. Can you come Metata de India to go on you? The you may take a scene, Sandy. Machine. Family.
Interesting graph in the report by the committee, and it shows that, you know, from 2010-11 to 2015-16, the contingent liability amount in the
liability case you go to so see on me cousin at Tazaki, the 67,170,000,000 Zaja. Da is a Kerasi, Meganda, Hita, Tizeki la, Ka, a seat tago, Zesitella, Megazanda, the south, done it the limil, the claisant, the clear classes. So, Mega said Lani de. I
think we need to get to the root of this and try to better manage this.
Live North. The public sector, they key us on $170 down there in Lazaki, Moratil. Can do 107 million as budget Jesus Lani de Castle Tanata de Kian. That is a case like Castle Candisi, Morati Halindi.
Some various class actions out there. I'm guessing really based on news headlines as to why we might all of a sudden owe $107 million. Furthermore, I think the GNWT has absolutely refused to ever engage in any sort of transparency about
the he say you the program the public account budget on tuition.
Oh, that we messed up a construction project and we had to settle for millions of dollars. All of the information I have about this is currently found in the news, and none of it is available public anywhere. I believe our government needs to look at this and needs to take a transparent approach to when we settle litigation. Why did it occur?
The litigation
which is unrealistic and not being done in other jurisdictions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Member for Yellowknife North.
Yellowknife North. The Department of Finance the policies education. I didn't do you down in Lago Gashi watch. Got the department committee Kageti. Dollar sheet the KG condiments policy make you each was go ending.
Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We talk about the fiscal responsibility policy, but we've heard the Department of Finance say that our current spending is unsustainable. There's clearly a disconnect between making sure that the policy works. I think it is doing certain things. I know that it limits us to, funding 50% of infrastructure through operating surplus, and then we usually reach right up to the other half with debt. And I think this has actually just created a push to use P3s because they are not part of that analysis. So I think it's having unintended consequences that are actually
physical years the government see you get a job ago without the say it team white days ago. Yeah, Jean see the occasion. That the handy got on task ago. policy on that.
Fiscal responsibilities policy just takes none of that into account. So I think this would be a great policy to overtake and
that is the policy and then is soon at the line.
To the motion, member for Frame Lake.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I want to thank my colleague from Yellowknife North. He's covered off a number of my concerns, particularly with regard to P3s being used increasingly by GNWT. But the other aspect that the report goes into, and this was found in the audit by the Auditor General, was that there was overspending on capital by $32 million during 2019-20.
Tanete ko jeji teke teje ko kai yekyoge si tani ozande je kias me kaya chines ki da son bate keji yudani tilde kanete je tigonde me teje agoti yizekio ha tizeke kandia ti kandi zeke di kleo kleni de jita go de aneja sita zo sega sule de koga the Auditor General.
That's another reason why we need to review this policy and make sure. President, so I support this motion and look forward to an opportunity to revise that policy. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Member for
Yellowknife North. The committee the Comptroller General financial statement is the public the public population data, unemployment rate key the major sectors budget the somba the down go osi go tare the Kotene demo gotten the adulati the Kote aji the Kezi Kandi Gunazu the Kezi Kandi says Leani de Cazalia. Yida the Comptroller General Kati Kandi Yundi Tanti somebody lot the Kezi Katana Taso or Zoza Kezi is Yahonen or I go JC let it out the Kandi Katana Tayan the Masin.
Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is committee conducted a review of best practices of public accounts across the jurisdiction and pulled these ones out.
Public accounts public account
simply not really there. Secondly, we make a number of recommendations of lining up the public accounts to the budget and the variances.
The public account the budget was on it, the continue the Magatan down to go on the budget case. Can't you see Megatent? That is a Kigatan to go. Goodly the kitten a gaganata. Can't you go? Agala can't down the holiday case here. That the candy the cane day. That Megai down the lendy the case here. $10 million on down. That is the cane day. The budget agulia with the Lizaki did the Tiago Plaza land. Can't deny budget of the public accountancy at the Ticaco,
the accountants point something up, it automatically makes a change in the corresponding main estimates. That's not occurring here. I really would like the Comptroller General and the Department of Finance to get together to make that happen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Member for Yellowknife North.
Madam Chair, the committee education Comptroller General, the Auditor General Canada is the Standing Committee. Town the Galagin does a case, Gulia Guchat case, you can give it agoti. Is a Keda Tangdin is Rishi, Kotazatala, the government of North Territories. Must it?
Although I wasn't a member of the GovOps committee in the last assembly, I do want to acknowledge that there has been some improvements made in the public accounts in this 6
The public account is done, says it's needs in the land guide.
language user guide that's available now. P3 reporting has improved. I think that's
the guide that he teaches that the also the public account.
So anyways, there's a number of other recommendations that have been adopted that I just can't think of off the top of my head, but there have been some significant improvements in the public accounts over the 6 years I've been here. I want to acknowledge that, and I think but the standing committee here has made a number of suggestions for further improvements, and I support them. Thanks, Madam Chair.
To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried.
Motion that Madam Chair, the committee that KC Governor's Territory says provided the Chicago report again that the 120 days got on making out at the end in the Mussy.
Order to the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Thank you, committee. Do you agree that you have
Mussy Committee 2319-2 Standing Committee Government Operations Report view of the 2019-20 is public accounts. Mussy Committee Kati Mawana Hite, the Committee Report 2319 to Standing Committee Operations Report is a review of the 2018-2019 2019-2020 public accounts.
Member for Frame Lake, what is the wish of committee?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I move that the
There's a motion on the floor to report progress. The motion is in order and non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. I will now rise and report progress.
committee as a whole, Nivik Mr. Speaker, committee the KC 21-22 committee report 19-2 the KC Masika 14 motions in that is no the guide 21-19-2 the KC 23-19-2 is a car no and car one the committee whole is a car you want to get in the machine.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Third reading of bill.
Third reading of bills. Minister, Finance. Mr. Speaker, I can remember this is that in Bill 45, Relation Act, Infrastructure 2022-23 the case. Got you tired of the make. That is the case in a recorded vote as well. Andy, Massey.
To the motion, member for Frame Lake.
Frame Lake. This is case at the what's he just so easy. As you go down as they go, the case Minister Finance case, the case, we got in that the case. DC Kolasa County, the project is on Northwest Territories to $522 million. That's in La. Is the case County more consent.
Capital in our programs and services. It's called the fiscal responsibility policy that requires us to have an operating surplus on our operations side to spend money on buildings and big infrastructure. When we overspend big on capital,
this program the action plan is federal government. And these 14 million is the infrastructure. You go, what's on Dani day, to let the talk highway Gazanda. In Leni day, clean all season highway the Gazanda. 10 million clear guy in that 25 years with the Azon the Kizigazan down the program service the care. That the overspending the Kizigazan that 2019-2020 the Kizigazan that GNWT the K the cargo Tazea that the GNWT the K 32 million all the Tezeki Wigith. Needs a Kirkamagazan Taz go on. Policy
reliance on P3s as a way to finance large projects. In June of this year, the finance minister said during the budget.
Finance at the Megatan Datu late education. Catule says a lady, the Catule condition, Hajia the Kia ear the Kenny, the Catule says a lady, 2021-2025%. Tazo Dio and Teleco. That is a case in La Sanson Bagyo the capital, but the revenue the Gade Chile. That is the case in Candiga the Leani de cut the orders operation Dago Tiazago, the Gasomba de Tiani de
revenues or slash programs and services to continue to spend on capital.
The order revenue as it out the case in the Tati Landin is the finance ministry, the Tiakandi or going there on it.
In my view, this cabinet is not serious about raising revenues. It gave away $21 million in revenues to Husky Oil.
21 million revenue the government case in 15 years.
It did nothing to replace the $1.4 million a year in lost revenue. I've been pushing for a fairness review of our tax.
The taxation in data Tagayo. Candida Tina Zekarisi, federal Zeki, the revenue Zeki. Candia Seko Senita Naha Candin Denizo.
Slashing programs and services has happened in the last assembly, but the mysterious government renewal initiative will have to come up with millions of dollars.
Government millions on Basa, Agantazago, Tizekizia. That is a case to Kakoti. the September 15 the Kuro is you go son make a good in day, because any day ye may say you want to go as a chew the car you take your messinia jet. Do tend the cook on the cacotiani. And yes, long as she Megatan doesn't do the goat in the COVID the co.
Funding is removed, we are in a permanent deficit position. Debt has grown at a rate of 17.2% annually since 2008-09, almost 4 times the rate of revenue growth. Our ability to spend on capital will decrease dramatically, and the minister predicted it will be less than half what it is now in a couple of years. I'm all for stimulus spending as part of economic recovery, but we don't seem to be able to get money out the door right now. I couldn't get a concise answer on what the actual carryovers are in the
capital budget was it. It in the assembly say the what Mewandi, Meganda, Mekanata. Is it on it on Dene Zhatıé Artillery is a key waters in the
contractor capacity, the ability of our economy to do the work that the government intends to contract? Is it as a result of cash flow issues, problems with our capacity? Procurement review is still underway, with changes unlikely to be fully implemented during the 2022-23 fiscal year. Why rush to spend money now when we should change?
Government
increase to the federal borrowing limit, we only have about $300 million left. How could we ever?
300 million to say, you can't see days with the high with that some back in the county with that does go on.
I just don't get it. We need to stop pretending we can ever do all of these and focus on only one if we must. And that should be the Mackenzie Valley Highway, if it can be done in small sections where communities can actually benefit from the construction work. The contract spending on
the committee down the dog is a guy does go to contract security down the Gallagher days the Kirgatan does go 10% which is not that. Is you got and does go on.
The final
10% of the Gotland dates as all the year and the more than days that is a Kirgatan does on. Tanate somber millions of CDK with a key. Dagger 15 times on the Jidashumo Mikuresho. The federal funding
versions, but we continue to spend more on roads than housing, a lot more. Problems relate to affordability, suitability, and adequacy. If that's not bad enough, core housing needs have actually increased by 11%.
Core housing is here. Giant in Israel. In the Oneno, I go to see Diaja Sa to take what in there. It's a Kisi got and Dani is Tile. The county the care. Does he come with
flow through the main estimates, but clearly we are not spending enough on housing to even start to make a difference. Yes, there are some items.
Metata in the alley coming good as your candio, Kakwete cases in London is you are. Is at the only as you are, and say, Cardin is you knew the eye dandy.
Left to steer this ship in the right direction, get serious about raising.
Kalaoki, I never say on to you can't do the case, you can't do some bucket to see right time day, as you are, and say. Then I can remember, says he. To budget was healthy, they are all. Can't you go cabin members, you go to good healthy and the massity.
Member for Frame Lake, motion is in order to the motion. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We came into this assembly and we had a pretty tight fiscal situation, and so I have a dream. I have a dream of leaving the next assembly 100 million.
Mega somebody like 100 million. Na assembly community is the candia right. The other some by security naki. Ka Tanet is a Kigujidity car, but 500 million the budget.
I actually have very little issue with the individual projects in here. You know, an NWT budget has never been voted down in the history of the Assembly. We are very much a rubber stamp institution when it comes to budgets, sometimes some small changes.
Budget is good year the Hutli one out of the selling. But the only la candy Katian is coming curious. The gate with the case the key off 500 million with the kitty to do right. Can't do it on the capital budget that says you got some to go.
Actually spending, when you total up all over the projects, well over $2 billion here, Mr. Speaker. This specific capital budget is about 40% funded by the GNWT.
GNWT 40%. GNWT the federal government take 40. GNWT take 60. Ka any that the county take any day. The number one that you can do. Hakala you can do the end.
Let alone other major infrastructure projects, let alone operations and maintenance. Mr. Speaker, there's a couple things I want to speak to, but one is my frustration with what is publicly available out there. We all in this House have a copy of the acquisition plan. It can tell you the individual price.
The public cases you mostly carry out in is la down there go to good there. Down there the numbers the kids go to nature. Down there GNWT he that they get target public gaji was a large make a grande.
Instance, you can see their 5-year acquisition plan. Every single project has the range.
You can't down there again like you make a cathy tiny then is you are lucky. Can't do time on it any day. Do lazy go to a good day, making a good day clear right hand the capital budget case here.
What the total cost actually comes out. Add on to the fact that we often get sued and then settle with contractors, it's an even more impossible task to tell you what something actually ends up costing in the public accounting. Now,
the public account will go in there. That the capital budget case cause you to come and kill each one.
Voting for today. Down south, you could argue that there is an option to increase revenue. Out of our citizens through taxes anytime soon. The extent to which it actually costs in the O&M is a question the Department of Finance could not answer with any clarity. I get it is a complicated question, but the disconnect between our capital budget and our O&M budget leads us.
I
want to admit that I will be voting against this capital budget, but
the capital budget may go say $5 more million they quite a kigani de Yundani Dago Kandi Nite only day is yes and as $1 billion Kandigas and Tatu infrastructure 10 million clear guy uses is yini de and that on it a child on a guy with Asiakala Sombago say
not add up. Mr. Speaker, this budget is also taking $2.5 million away from our.
The budget should not just need the Dakota case. The Quazaki, knowledge 12 Gotele, the Yutakizana Himagaita, Utlimagaita as go, the capital money they there.
You can see through them. Mr. Speaker, if those two things were to happen, you know, less than 0.5% of this total budget, I probably would have voted in favor. But
2%
the infrastructure, which in this case is actually removing $2.5 million. Mr. Speaker, we know that we spend over $68 million a year on our roads.
Kake Lucy somebody 68 million son
Maintenance is $465 million. We allocate $5 million a year for deferred maintenance. That would take 90 years to catch up on our deferred maintenance.
90 years
of maintaining what we have, and I think it is very tempting to build new things. But until that math is there, and until that responsibility is there, I believe we are setting future assemblies and future generations up for failure to have more crumbling infrastructure. This budget does not even get into the Power Corporation, which we know also needs
the budget the Power Corporation
Mr. Speaker, I know that this budget then builds certain human infrastructure, and a great example is long-term care beds. We all know we need those long-term.
100,000 ozan de kanti de kesi. 120 million is go jidedi di kam mekuricho. Department ju kanti sin is unyosa adin. Tandi ke to zendi jite ke ga zan da ze go on.
With glue and strings and losing nurses at such a fast rate. So on one hand, we are asking our health authority to, add tens of millions of dollars.
Health authority somba sokoti ke ko ze sa ze ke ju. He also the get a good on DJ Gaita. He seen as a health system, Megaita as a go, Megoita, and then there's also to live tacozan. That's he hutli, Segaton, that Andy Moda DJ Warisindi.
Mr. Speaker, there were so many priorities in this House, and I don't think the hard work has been done to prioritize the capital. I can't tell you how much the school in Colville Lake is going to cost. That's not a figure I'm allowed to say.
Colville Lake, the Quina, the Kitwin, take a scheme with Shone. And you is a Kegatan da, got to say, Yatitlani, the Catula are Ron, the Kedu, Yatitlani, the Catula number, Metakata, this one, the three county, rather than Tago, all in the two.
I don't see how this math is adding up, and I don't have the public information to conclude that.
Public security,
To Wati, I don't have a lot of issues to this project, but I think this project makes the most sense if Fortune Minerals signs into a long-term power purchasing agreement and actually buys some power from us. That is about the only way we could justify the.
What teacher the Liaji take wash you can't do Maganda. Tandia the Lia, Tandia the Tilly new Dita, Tandia Hitler, you take a right as go.
And without knowing the root of it, I believe there is something going on where the Department of Infrastructure gets its money into the capital budget far easier than any program or service. I would really like to see the success rate of infrastructure going to FMB versus communities. In this capital budget is money for community hydro. Apparently, we got it out of ISIP funding. Great.
Mr. Sombaki, the community take a Tauti court Tazala, Mr. Sombaki, Sombaki, or to that you give me good chole is Yadasi. Tantia Thickley, I can't do the $1
billion obligation on our budget without even knowing which community it is in, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's not to say I don't support those projects. That's not to say I...
Nizuatin Lani Tetule, Nizunity at the capital budget, Kisi, has Rome Tetegani Dendi. Ijidasi, and the operation budget, Kisi, Nizun Deni Denizo.
That budget, I believe I could find to get us on a path. This budget is inherently linked, being connected to the operations of budget, maintenance budget. I do not know what is planned for the next O&M budget, but I suspect it is a status quo budget that will take us right up to our debt ceiling and well beyond that, and put our next assembly in the very difficult position of day one.
100 million orders are good. You
I believe we need to start maintaining what we have before we look in.
Mr. Speaker, 500 million is too late. Because
they can provide a strong sense of community. I believe that is our priority. I believe it's insulting to pass this budget that builds 0 new houses for the Housing Corp and actually takes money away from our communities, yet passes the single largest capital budget in GNWT history. And for that reason, I don't believe the work has been done or the due diligence by this cabinet to actually take us where we need to be, and I will be voting against this budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Motion is in order to the motion. Member for the Batcha.
I'm all about economic growth, always have been, very pro-business. Long-time resident, born and raised here, you know, and I wish I would have, when we were going through the capital estimates, to cost this budget and see by community. And when I have see 2 MLAs from
capital budget Kandi Kotateki Kandi Danete Gusiki Kandi as in Lanizua, Handinizua, 2 MLAs young life got easy Kandi who can take. You could say it. She do Cassandre.
We're going to have economic recovery, Mr. Speaker. This is the way to go. I think they have to be more careful on the way the contracts were given. Our people are looked after in the north. What comes out of this budget, there's a few extra buildings for regional centers and communities. We get the crumbs, always. This is our suffering, large and small. And it trickles down to the entire Northwest Territories. If you don't have business, you don't have no social programs. I feel really strongly that, you know, when you talk about the negative part,
businesses in da 50 years da. Ajila tage yatha la te kesi na kina di business on da si hutli me gala ta go. Chi di ni na go ta de le kam gera. Ji sa ga zan da go. Da yi te ke ju ga zan da son la ku ga di na he de ga di zean.
When I first grew up, I worked for 50 cents an hour for when I was in high school.
School there, they could only 50 cents an hour go around le. They could go.
People that have not been born here and gone through all those hardships in the north and making those kind of decisions on behalf of growth in the business sector, in the wider sector of government, Mistakes are always made. Mistakes are made even in business.
Ka zago di kami giri jo di business ke de ko kan du se na ze yan. Yi da xi xi di xi ba je le xi ga ma xi ne sen de.
Sabacha, motion is in order to the motion. Member for Hayerverse North.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just bear with me because I got to use my computer for this one.
The computer da the Mr. Speaker. The budget ke xi ga da ni de a zhong de ke xi kan da me wo han di kan da. Si business person la de han di ga lan da. Is ke xi song han di xi ga lan da. Di ze ga lan da de.
You know, go without a wage. You know, I felt the bad times and I felt the good times. So, you know,
Da za go de da go ne zu de ze de jiang le di kan di ze ke ga zhen da song ba ze ke ga ni de.
Pandemic with limited new capital projects that would ensure our northern residents and businesses will be put to work. Absent any new medium-sized projects, we may experience a period of reduced opportunities for small to medium-sized businesses that may well resonate into a period of stagnation in the MWT. Albeit, we do have major project work being carried over from previous assemblies, such as the Mackenzie Valley Highway, Tulsan expansion, and the Slavey Geological Province Corridor. These long-term projects will continue well into 20th Assembly and beyond.
Assembly down the new kiri o the Kiziketa Mezeketa as the Tiagon, Nakirakalan Tazi Konizi, Yisagai Tazagon, down the Vezekotai Miki, Kotai teaching around it.
If we are to move out of this pandemic and move ahead as a territory,
the Mechaza Site was in Taza City in Tazekunizi any day, the Onze City as a go.
Projects that are the bread and butter of most businesses in the north. These projects support and aid in the continued growth of our communities. Mr. Speaker, the federal government has provided stimulus dollars to continue to fuel the economy during the pandemic. This will come to an end, and we as a government have failed in developing business plans needed to secure and back up any request for securing sufficient project dollars. The lack of new capital projects in the budget raises the question, what has this government doing?
The government do agi the tagain, the Handigo New Tiki, to take out in day. Taji the Kajili and Dadi Quaginta, Agila Geho, and the federal government head on the New Guinea or the Casio.
Mr. Speaker, another issue is the lack of housing. This is a major stumbling block when it comes to employability.
Quite a cake, Hayan DC, the Romas allowed the capital budget the Kenny day. Coagotan Tezeke, Chikuakoni, Dandi, Yundagua, Nonita, Tandiagotitia, is a Kigonezua Tezeki. Quezon, as long as she was allowed.
Addressed through collaboration and buy-in from residents, communities, indigenous governments, and the private sector, but it also takes money. Mr. Speaker, this government has access to federal programs that support new infrastructure. As example, the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, for which two streams exist, with northern proponents having access to both. These program dollars are meant to provide for new
government dalo si organization choni de handia sia gaganda haji di metao de auli geni de haji metao de sioli haji di tu le metao de gaitne ni ija ron mesala de die de ganti de ke tare ti de ke ga de ko
over design of buildings, maintenance and repair costs. To move ahead, we need
Asi kandi ziga lai ta somba naga se la ko me teja si ti ji te ke da go ji te ji te ke ga zan da zo na ki government ke si la kandi ka si ti ha zo ka si ti ha go already.
Here we are falling short. We have houses on the books that should have been built this year and haven't been. Now, Mr. Speaker, one significant component of this legislation assembly.
The legislative assembly kandi Kagin Dai Kagane Tote Kenny de Azome Tezeni de members of the Editia Yegoketi Tadi Tiago Tazala Tago Dizeke Tagon de Azekation.
Support strongly is the non-renewable resource sector. The sector
那个车是咋打的地那个车是这个打的地你的，一到对嘞，你就你打对这个领的一个你的，每个打下，看这个一些个来打这个，就上把这个干的。
to this government is certain and fair. We must make sure that northern businesses are positioned to participate, that residents are positioned to participate. To access these resources, we need roads to these resources and must focus on the construction of the Mackenzie Valley Highway by making it the highest of priorities, as it is the one that will have a major impact on the economy. The ministers on the other side take note of what I said. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Haver South. Motion is in order to the motion. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, all I'm going to say is ditto to my colleague here from Hay River South.
Highways on the Tambour highway 学院，他的这个荣幸没干的，第三把这开始某个针对你的，在11年13年里打，在11荣这个 department 去就给他说这个，这8D 年里打，看的那 region 只有这个他这个，他第是对是，但第是这个看的个真的，在11从把看的是等等的说。 사자 계시라면 유관 government 듣고 있대. 세 아들이 뒤뒤래. 되제 계시 간디제 계시 가잔다. 다 간디니 데라 뒤에로 시시나게 살라지들이 나잔디알이 간디 와르시 다디게 류제 계시 간디아세를 아니데 가가젤이야 둘이 유관 거 듣고 있대 안디 디제 계시야. 다디 버저제게 아디오테 온선 바니데. Thank
you, Member for Great Slave. Motion is in order to the motion. Member for Kamlik.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am supporting this budget. This budget has an impact on a lot of the people to continue to put food on their tables and the tables of the employees that absolutely do agree with some of the words of the MLA for Frame Lake and the MLA for Yellowknife North in that the government does need to change the way that it's doing business. The way the government is doing business to attain contracts from the GNWT, which is our largest surplus of cash into our NWT economy right now, is the way to go about it. I feel that if we want to send a message, then we need to talk about how we vote come main estimate time, which is money that directly impacts the functioning of the GNWT and not the functioning of our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Kamlik. Motion is in order to the motion. Member for Mumphrey.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I will be supporting this budget as well. I was going to abstain. Employment rate, and I know there's going to be a lot of jobs that's going to be coming up through these infrastructure, and I know I am aware that Wati people are paying for high power rates, so Wati transmission line is on there. But it would be nice if we can have more money invested in mental health, addiction, and housing. And I think as a government, we can do more to get more other organizations as well. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Mumphrey. Motion is in order to the motion. Question has been called. The minister has requested a recorded vote. All those in favor,
Minister, she recorded vote out me as on any reason they are doing.
The member for Yellowknife South, the member for Range Lake, the member for Yellowknife Centre, the member for Thabacha, the member for Cam Lake, the member for Great Slave, the member for Hay River South, the member for Montfouille, the member for Dene Zhatıé, the member for Inuvik Twin Lakes, the member for Nahende, the member for Satu, the member for Inuvik Boot Lake, and the member for Hay River North.
all those opposed, please rise.
The member for Frame Lake, the member for Yellowknife North.
All those abstaining, please rise. The results of the recorded vote, 14
in favor, so agent getting okay, the motion that.
Bill 42 has had third reading. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Minister responsible for education, culture, and employment.
Education, culture, and employment. Third reading of bills. That is the case. The new victim is the case. Bill 30. Aurora College Agazzi got you tie what's a make. That is the case. Recorded vote out anything you must see.
Your motion is in order to the motion. Question has been called. The minister has requested a recorded vote. All those in favor, please rise.
The member for Hay River North, the member for Great Slave, the member for Hay River South, the member for Montfouille, the member for Yellowknife North, the member for Dene Zhatıé, the member for Inuvik Twin Lakes, the member for Nahende, the member for Satu, the member for Inuvik Boot Lake, the member for Thabacha, the member for Frame Lake, the member for Cam Lake, the member for Yellowknife South, the member for Range Lake, the member for Yellowknife Centre.
Oh. Thank you. The results of the recorded vote.
Dati Karo and Getia on that tie, they got it to a car, they got it in the mercy.
Reading the bills, Mr. Clerk, orders of the day.
Orders of the day for Thursday, December 9th, 2021, 1:30 p.m. Prayer, minister statements, member statements, returns to oral questions, oral question 846-19-2, recognition of visitors in the gallery, acknowledgements, oral questions, returns to written questions, replies to the Commissioner's address, petitions, reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, tabling of documents, notices of motion, motions 46, 47, and 48-19-2, notices of motion for first reading of bills, second reading of bills, consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters, Bill 23, Bill 29, report of committee of the whole, third reading of bills, orders of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This House stands adjourned until Thursday, December 9th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m.
1:30 Thursday was it? Not the machine.